welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. I'm your host, Max Mosier, here today with two other Infinity Bros. First, coming back from his 2-week hiatus, it's Infinity Bro Isaac. Isaac, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Ready to roll. Ready to talk about some fun stuff or not fun stuff, just depending on your perspective.
I would say Isaac's the voice of the Infinity Bros, but the face of the Infinity Bros is my other co-host who was here last week with me, and he's back. It's Robbie Sauter. Robbie, how are you?
I am doing great. Just finished The Last of Us episode 3, and can't wait to talk about it with the bros.
If we took one piece from each of the bros to make the ultimate bro, it would be my voice and Robbie's face. Is that what we're saying? Or would it be Robbie's muscles? Because that part is kind of
I think
important.
his face is a good spot to be at.
We definitely don't want it to be anybody else's face. So it probably is Robbie's face.
If we're rating anything out of 10, like none of us are above a 6. Right? Like face-wise.
Oh, yeah, face-wise for sure.
Yeah, I'd say we're
a bunch of 6s and belows. But that works
Brutal.
perfectly for us because we rate things out of 6. So
It does.
yeah.
If it's your first time here, we're glad you're here to hear us speak down about ourselves and not fight too hard with Robbie about that just total evisceration of my face. But we got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about The Last of Us, episode 3, as I've got just snot coming down my nose. Forgive me. I am also dealing with my 5th. This is no joke. My 5th round of COVID.
At this point, it's just flowing through your veins.
It doesn't make any sense. I'm pretty sure like legislation and world things happening around COVID are centered around people like me. Like it's just gotta be, right? Like this is ridiculous at this point.
You're the problem.
Pretty sure Max is going to be standing up at like right next to the president's podium, and they're going to be using him as an example when the CDC rolls out their next guidelines.
Yeah, it for sure is my dumb 5.5 face out of 10. Just up there, looking brutal. Anyway, I was trying to pitch the show, and then we just started talking back about my face again for the second time. We're going to talk about
you
The Last
started
of Us.
talking about your face. We didn't mention it, but
Isaac, shut up.
Just shut up, Isaac. Just shut up.
I'm sorry. I was just clarifying.
You're doing Mark's bit right now.
Can I just
Somebody's got
talk
it when he's not here. So
yeah, Mark being here on the show. Yeah, well, if it's not a Marvel property or a DC property, Mark just gets to take the week off. That's how it works out at Mark's house. So there it is.
Apparently.
The gauntlet's been thrown. Consider it thrown. Anything else, Isaac?
I'm good for now.
The Last of Us, episode 3, season 1. Long time. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the DC speculations of what James Gunn will announce if he announces anything tomorrow, January 31st. Allegedly, he was going to announce something. And what the slate is, we'll talk about what we think that will be. So there we go. Then we might talk about like some Funko Pop releases that got sent out about Flash Robbie that you can comment on.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited for that.
Really good tease.
Hey, you better stick around for that, okay?
So excited.
I wouldn't be making Rick and Morty sounds right now. I think that was not a really good time in history to be doing that.
I mean,
Isn't everyone throwing their yeah? Isn't everyone throwing? Okay.
I mean, really, nobody's going to have a chance because that dude on TikTok that impersonates him probably is going to get the job because he sounds exactly like him. I'm trying to like Kelly, I think is his name or something. Dude sounds exactly like them.
We're off the rails this start. Just Robbie, go ahead and finish what you're going to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, isn't everyone throwing their hat in the ring for the Rick and Morty thing? But yeah, Isaac already took it and ran with
You'd have my vote, Robbie. You know that. You'd have my vote.
I really hope not.
I think it'd be great. I need a rich friend.
At your face, the face of the
Max, out of all of us, you have a rich
hire
friend.
you.
I mean, I have rich friends, but I need like a super rich friend. I need one super rich one. You're my guy, Robbie. Don't let me down. All right. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to make sure that you're familiar with our rating system we referenced earlier. It is not out of 10. So we're going to go ahead and put that bumper right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
And then additionally, we're going to be spoiling the entire episode of The Last of Us, episode 3, entitled Long, Long Time. So from this point on, just know that we're going to spoil that. And when we get into DC talk too, there is a chance we're going to spoil some future things happening in the DC universe, in particular around movies like The Flash, Aquaman. So if you're somebody that's against that, this is just your universal spoiler warning. We're going to put that right here.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
If you haven't heard our season premiere review, Isaac did that with Infinity Bros Zane and Mr. JT from Forgive Me. Which podcast was he on again, Isaac?
Beyond the Fandom.
Mr. JT from Beyond the Fandom. Thank you for covering me on that. You'll want to check that out. Great insight and review if you want to check out episode 2 with two guys who have no idea about the game. Robbie and I were there.
Yeah, we were.
So today's a little bit of a better mix. So Isaac, for context, before we get into this, has played the full game, both the first and the second game, Isaac?
Just the first one. Yep. I gotta eventually get around to playing the second one before the second season comes out. But first one played, I don't know, it's probably like 4 or 5 years ago. It was like kind of when I got my PS4. So it's been a while, but I've played the whole thing.
You're familiar with the content.
Yep.
Great. Robbie is following along chapter by chapter with the show. So Robbie, did you complete it before or after the episode?
I have not played it since after episode 2, so I've not played any of this.
And then I am just watching casually. So I'm a filthy casual, as they would say. So understand those perspectives. If you're somebody that you're looking for a podcast that has all of that, we're not going to have all of that, but I think our unique perspectives will serve you well in evaluating the show. The episode synopsis is: when a stranger approaches his compound, survivalist Bill forges an unlikely connection. Later, Joel and Ellie seek Bill's guidance. This is directed by Peter Hoare, with Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin writing this. Both have been writing all season, and obviously Druckmann is the creator of the game. He's one of the creators, excuse me. Pedro Pascal plays Joe Miller. Bella Ramsey plays Ellie Williams. Anna Torv plays Tess. Nick Offerman plays Bill. Murray Bartlett plays Frank. And then after that, it's a slew of background characters. This one was interesting, guys, because Long, Long Time, the song by Linda Ronstadt, featured at the end of this episode, saw an almost 5,000% increase in streams on Spotify, similar to what happened with Stranger Things and Running Up That Hill. So clearly the audience continues to be swept away. This was before all the episodes were released. The first 3 episodes were sent to critics, and critics got to talk briefly on all 3. And they couldn't spoil it, but all of them were universally saying episode 3 is the one that is set apart critically from their perspective from the other 2. So this one has been really highly touted, and there's some trivia here as well that we'll talk about as we go throughout the show. But Robbie, we're going to start with you. Can you give us your rating of episode 3 of The Last of Us? Sorry. Long, Long Time, episode 3 of The Last of Us. Thank you.
Start with the rating. I'm giving this a 5.5 out of 6. Really, really enjoy it, but I think something that we'll dive more deeply into later is the fact that we mentioned this pre-show, but we want the story of Joel to continue, and this took a step back from that. Even though there was parts that did progress Joel's story, I wanted more time with them before we did a segue to something else. That's my only negative with this. The story that they told with Bill and Frank, it was wonderfully done. From start to finish, and we talked about this on our last review, that we like going back in time and seeing how people are progressing. So this one did a perfect job of that, going all the way 20 years back. Then it was 3, then it was 4, then it was another 3, and then it was a 10-year jump. So this giving us so much insight into the past was super, super enjoyable. And then getting to see it through Bill and Frank's lens was awesome. I loved all of that. My only negative is that I just like, could this have waited till episode 6? Like, putting it at episode 3 seemed like an interesting choice to me because we're just getting to know Joel and Ellie. So that was my only negative. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that negative, and I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 6. I really enjoy, you're nailing this, like everything they're doing in terms of pre-event on September 23rd is riveting. It's filling in gaps. It's jarring. So the visionary approach of the skeletons with the blankets, and then the next shot is the mom and the baby. That's good stuff. It's painful. It hurts. And it's really good storytelling. My problem with this episode, and it's the weakest of the 3 in my opinion, which is why I find it fascinating the critics really enjoyed it, is attention was so off of Joel and Ellie for so long that I keep getting told that Joel's a badass. And the only evidence I have of him being a badass is him surviving this thing and hitting the old lady in the first episode with a wrench. That's all I got right now. I believe he's a badass. I've seen implications and people that look scary in this show say he's really scary, don't mess with him. But I'm done hearing, and again, I haven't played the game. All the game people say he's a badass, right? So I just want to see this. I want to see it in action. I want to see him and Ellie go survive. And I think this episode struggled with that. I think the relationship was interesting. And I think if you were going for that, that was awesome. And I could see why you'd love that and give it a 6 out of 6. But for me, that's where it was lackluster. Isaac, go ahead.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I'm a guy on this podcast that pretty routinely gives things very good scores initially when I see them. And there's no exception. I give this episode a 6 out of 6. It's man, all 3 of these episodes have been 6 out of 6s for me. So I'm trying to think if it's really hard to rank them right now. They've all been just phenomenal in their own right. But I thought the story of Bill and Frank is just so well done. Nick Offerman we'll get into this a little bit. Ron Swanson. We'll get into this a little bit later, but I am so sad that we're not going to get to see more of him in the series because he just absolutely kills this episode. Like, he is the reason this episode is so impactful, I think. So sad about that, but man, he did such a phenomenal job. I absolutely loved basically everything about this episode. I think you have a point, Robbie. It does kind of like, I don't want to say it detracts, but it does take a major sidestep and completely avoid, I mean, from, minute whatever 5 to 45, it's all Bill and Frank's story, which
it's more like minute 10 because you do get that scene in the gas station where Ellie is engaged with the clicker.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely some pre stuff, but I mean, the big chunk of this episode is all Bill and Frank. And I was kind of, before we got into this episode, I was kind of thinking they would be intertwining it, like, their stories and stuff like that. No, it was once Bill and Frank's story started, it was Bill and Frank until their story ended. And I actually kind of appreciated that because when it came time to, when Joel and Ellie came back into the story, man, it just capped off their chapter so well. So while I do think it deviated quite a bit from kind of the main storyline, I know too, just from playing the game, I mean, we're going to get a ton of Ellie and Joel getting to know each other through the rest of this series. So for me, it was not like detrimental to my interest in this story. So I can see why that is a little bit of a knock in some people's opinion, for me, it did not detract from this episode at all. I
And I
absolutely
can see
loved it.
also why, as a video game player too, Isaac, like why you know the context of where this is going, right? So I think for you, you're like, I got plenty of time to spend with Ellie and Joel. This is a good filler because in the game I didn't get this much filler. So for spoilers for those that have not played the game, Bill and Frank are split in the game, and there's essentially, I won't get into spoilers of how Bill dies for the game if you want to go back and play it, but Bill does pass in a different way. And I think it's important to note that Druckmann took the liberty to change that and really spend quality time on this relationship, which I think was a risk. And obviously the critics loved it. And I do understand for the sake of TV, you have to be more than the two main characters, I think. I understand that decision.
Right.
When you're building a story like this, you really have to build up the Tessas and you have to build up the Bills. I totally understand that perspective of the argument. But you're talking to the guy of the three of us. I'm the guy who has no gameplay experience. You're selling me a product right now of every poster is Joel and Ellie. It's everything. And they're, especially Joel, is barely in this show right now. And it's kind of bothering me now. In the first two episodes, I was like, episode 2's ending was great. I was like, okay, Tess is gone. It is Joel's time. Here we go. It is now Joel moment. And then he sidesteps again. Robbie, I think you made a great point. Episode 6, great way to put it. This would have been a much better strategic spot down the line. I think that's a really good point in my perspective.
Right. I just don't know, like, and I don't know how Bill fits into the game, but like that might be an issue. Like, there's no way it could have been later because you need that Bill connection. You need Joel probably to get all those supplies, right? Because now he has everything that he needed.
That's kind of like why it wouldn't work down the road, because the reason Bill is in this story is to basically give Joel all the things he needs to set them off on their journey. So it unfortunately does need to be like right now, because otherwise it just wouldn't really make sense down the road unless they completely deviated from the video game story,
which
but
would
I
make
do
people
wanna-
more upset than
right.
anything.
And there are people, I think most of the critics are pretty excited about this episode, but I have heard definitely some complaints that, they're definitely deviating from the video game with this episode. And even if you keep watching the, how it's made, like HBO does an awesome, little clip of how it's made afterwards. Neil Druckmann talks about how this is the biggest deviation from the video game is this episode.
Well, and I would say, like, me and Max actually we hit on this, and we actually cut it up for a TikTok if you want to go check out our TikTok or social media. But like, you can make deviations in video game stories and shows as long as it doesn't deviate from like the main storyline. Like, this isn't going to affect a big portion of the main storyline. Like, Bill and Frank are just a piece, right? So you can create this, and I'm totally fine with them creating this and having their creative property with it, especially when it's done well. Like, we hit on that. Like, when things are done well and you can make it work, as long as you didn't change Joel and Ellie completely and what happens with them completely, it's fine. So this is why I feel like this episode is completely okay, and that's why it's still a great episode, and it doesn't like make me like more uninterested in this show at all. If there was a way to move it later on, would have been the only thing, but obviously that would have been difficult because he needs all those supplies, which I assume are going to play a huge role in the episodes moving forward. So that's the only little thing. It's just like, because like Max is saying, we just got Joel and Ellie, just them together, and they just had this tragic death.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just like, last thing, they just had this extremely tragic death that we learn by the end of this episode was even more deeply impactful to Joel than we realized. And now we just didn't get to see them work through that yet. And I'm assuming we will, but like, we just had that and we got a snippet of it. And now we have to wait another week is my only negative thought. If this was a streaming platform and I could just go instantly to the next episode, I probably don't care. And it's probably a 6 out of 6. right? Like I think that's a little bit of a change. That's just a little tiny little bit of a change in my opinion.
I want to talk a little bit about that because I talked about this I think with several different people, Jarrett specifically, and with Scott Higa about Andor, because there are people out there still who could not get through the first 3 or 4 episodes of Andor because it's slow story
There's some
building.
grind,
Those
yeah.
first 4 episodes, and I mean, I enjoyed them thoroughly for sure. They're not the most exciting episodes of television out there, but they made everything seem so impactful. Just the little things that they were doing, and the payoff for that was incredible. So this is what I'll say to that. I think that the slow build, the slow burn that we're going to have with Joel and Ellie is going to pay off majorly in the last 3 episodes of the show. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a piece of we want to get to know the main characters more. But I think if they're pushing that for a better payoff, I'm okay with that. It's definitely tough to wait week to week. I mean, when we're used to all these streaming services, we're just bam, 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 like Netflix, binge everything right now. Definitely is a different mindset than what we're kind of used to right now. But that's why we're talking about this on this podcast and on the internet now, because this is what's drumming up all this conversation.
I would push back on that. I don't think this is a slow burn problem. On the contrary, these first 3 episodes have been riveting. All of Bill and Frank's story were riveting. Like there was no slow burn in their story, in my opinion.
Well,
their story was
couldn't be in
their
their
story was
right. They only had
their story was
whatever,
filled with great character development, great romance in the context of that relationship, start to finish. The moment they met to the moment they die, it was every major gap was filled in. So I don't know if I understand what you're trying to say in the context of it's Ellie and Joel's slow build. My problem is, are we going to get 4 episodes down the line, and is every episode going to be about the supporting cast around them? And it's just going to be implied that, oh, if you watch the game, you totally get this Easter egg. Is Druckmann putting too much value on this relationship? I don't have enough of game expertise to say yes or no, but as just a filthy casual viewer of this show, it was a miss for me. It was a miss because this show is building me up to these fights with clickers. Even with Bill and Frank, I got 1 fight with them. 1. That's it. Bill's like this big gun hoorah guy, and I only got 1 fight, and it wasn't even that. It was the aftermath of his fight. This was a miss for me. It just was. It's a bummer because the show's good and I'm enjoying it. It's not detracting my viewership, and the argument of like, oh, that relationship and romance will pay off down the line is potentially there. But if they got all the supplies, like you said, Isaac, then it really doesn't. It's just, but this was a bump along the way. This was our monster of the week, per se, or our relationship of the week.
This is a stupid nitpick. But Bill's supposed to be this like you said, gun-toting, like has these amazing defenses guy. And the dude's like completely lit up standing in the middle of a street firing a sniper rifle.
Yeah.
When there is clear cover anywhere else.
Literally anywhere. Anywhere.
Like I understand they have to make sure he like gets hurt, but that was so silly to me. It's like this dude is smarter than this.
There was a way better way to do it, Robbie. You're absolutely right.
Like he could have been like shooting from his house or like from like a higher area and just a stray bullet gets through the wood or whatever. But like for him to just stand in the middle of the road, like that's not what that guy would do.
Dude made it very clear at the beginning of the episode and throughout his time that he was like so prepped for everything.
Exactly.
He had every major thing. He was fighting about the lawnmower and about wasting resources. You're telling me he's going to stand in the middle of the street for a fight? Get out of here with that.
Well, he's wearing a white shirt and completely lit up by all the flame. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Not a nitpick. That's not a nitpick. That's a legit claim about that character. That's not a nitpick.
Also, I mean, this is just one thing that I noticed, and I wouldn't even call it a nitpick because the direction they went was obviously the way they chose to do this episode. But I mean, Bill in the video game is honestly, Nick Offerman does basically a spot on job of portraying Bill in the video game. Like they're pretty much the same character.
It's Ron Swanson.
It's Ron Swanson. Yeah. You go on this mission with Bill though. Like basically he's got this town, which they do in the series as well. and he sends Joel and Ellie on this mission to go get a battery on the other side of town that has a bunch of infected people. So they could have went with some action in this episode, but instead they decided to focus on that relationship between Bill and Frank, which I'm not sad about, because it was a really awesome episode in whole.
That's
but
interesting.
The deviation that they took was like, we could have had more action. We could have had more zombies, more clickers, all that stuff. And they just chose to go a different direction. I'm assuming we're more.
That's the reason they did the scene at the beginning with Ellie. That's the whole reason they did that. That was your clicker scene this week. There you go. You got your new clicker scene. We're done. Now we can go to this story.
And there was, now that you mentioned that too, that was a really interesting scene with Ellie and that clicker in the basement. Or not clicker, the infected in the basement.
Just the infected, yeah. The clickers and infected.
Right.
Forgive me, sorry. Forgive my vernacular.
She goes down there, like basically is kind of like playing with this thing. Like she cuts it just to see what'll happen, ends up killing it, but like there's a weird moment where it's like just focusing.
It seemed like that thing was going to talk.
It definitely.
Did anyone else get that?
I didn't know. Like, it was an intense moment.
It was weird.
But like,
it
looked like the infected thing's eye looked at her like it was pleading, begging for mercy, which, I mean, she gave it by killing him. But that was an interesting moment because, like, for some reason, there was focus on that moment. And I don't really know why at this point. Like, I'm assuming that's going to be revealed down the road a little bit. But like, this was a moment that they specifically had her go down there. They specifically had her find this. And it really doesn't go deeper than that. Like, she kills it, comes back up, and boom, they're on their way again.
I imagine there's a payoff for that later.
Yeah, that was a moment to me that's like, there's got to be something to that later down the road. I don't know what that is, but
we've talked about a lot of negatives. Let's talk about some positives real quick. I really like with Bill and Frank too, how they show this post-apocalyptic world. I like all the things Bill does to set up his house. I know, Robbie, we talked about the gunfire scene, how that wasn't great, but how he is prepared for people to approach the fences and burn them. That was just wild to me. How he was very fueled up right out the gate, how he watched everybody essentially be sheep going with the government. He knew, he's like, they are not going to help you. They're going to kill you. And it happened. And he's sitting there just mocking all of them. And he looks to be gallivanting around his community after.
Oh my gosh. When he's in the Home Depot afterwards, just like loading up his cart with stuff, I was like, man, that would be kind of cool actually to be in there just like picking out what you want for the future.
I thought that was a way too crowded Home Depot for the circumstances of that civilization. I think more people would be headed down there for stuff in that situation, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's why they showed, like, obviously the military was already there. They already cleared out that town. So the military is going town to town.
They're clearing everybody out. And as we saw earlier in the episode, clearing them out or killing them. Like,
I also love that Bill did not lose his libertarian philosophy of life. Even after dating Frank. So like they have that relationship where they're talking in the street and they're talking about the mowing of the lawn, and Frank's like, well, they weren't Nazis. He goes, they're definitely Nazis. He goes, well, they weren't. They are now, but they weren't. I'm just like,
they are now.
I loved that. I loved that dialogue. I loved the "Don't tread on me" flag. I loved the bunker. It was just perfect. Like, I was like, that is prepper territory.
Again, this is like exactly spot on the character in the video game as well. Like, he's this like, conspiracy theory bunker. He had all this stuff ready before the outbreak happened. Like, it wasn't like he started preparing all this. Like, he was ready for this. This is like what he was made for type of thing. And it's like, Nick Offerman, man, just like he just makes this episode shine.
This is Nick Offerman too. You guys obviously have been joking that's Ron Swanson. Actually, if you've never seen Devs, I got more of Forrest, the character he plays in that show, vibes. Devs is a very dense show on FX. If you want to check it out, it's very dense, but very worth your time. It's actually Offerman's one of his better acting roles, in my opinion. And I got really strong, like how he was processing as a character. Different character philosophies of life, but how they processed, I saw that in Offerman in this. Offerman's such a good actor.
He's a
so
great
good.
actor. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, you like watching Parks and Rec, you kind of think he's like a one-trick pony guy, like, oh yeah, he's just a funny guy or whatever. But like seeing him in these serious roles is like, man, dude can act, and it is phenomenal. So we mentioned it on the previous 2 episodes, but J-Buck has been doing these side-by-side shots from the video game to
Oh yeah.
the series, and we'll throw that in the show notes for you guys to look at. But it is just, I'm always just impressed by how they're able to fit some shots that are just exactly the same as the video game. And
am I correct too that the ending shot, Isaac, is the title screen?
it sure reminded me of it. I couldn't tell you if it was exactly the same, but like, I mean, when you go to the title screen in Last of Us, it's pretty iconic. It's like an empty room. You're panning over this open window, and there's like these draped, like light drapes that are kind of like waving in the wind.
That's the opening of the game.
The game,
right?
yeah, and there's like the
Oh.
guitar playing, and so when you're panning out from them driving away from Bill's town, I got the same like kind of vibes as that. I mean, it's not like the exact same shot; it's a little bit different angle, but they're doing a great job of doing like recalls to the game.
That title screen's got a lot more meaning to that now from this episode. Interesting.
I think the other thing that's big to hit on is like we didn't really know how long Joel and Tess were together.
Right.
At least I don't recall them saying they've been together so long. But in this, we realize, oh, they've been together for a very long time and have done a lot of things together, including probably bartering that with more than just Bill. Like they've been doing a lot, and this is why Joel is probably so well known, which is really really interesting to me. So we get like they make friends because Frank wants to have friends, and it just happens to be Tess on the radio. So Tess is the only connection Joel has to any other people, and now he's stuck with a 12-year-old girl, and he doesn't have Tess anymore, and now he just has to go find his brother, who is all we know from the show is in trouble for some reason. We don't know anything else. So it's just kind of interesting that they decided to they keep showing these snippets of Joel and Tess, and I assume we're going to get more. I have a feeling that's going to be a big payoff for the future of this show is the history of Joel and Tess, and it's going to make it's going to make the impact of losing her in episode 2 even bigger, which I think is going to be really really interesting. And it might be Ellie like becoming that rock for Joel, because she is that like Spitfire that Tess was. Like for the short amount of time we got both of them together, they are very very similar in being like just go get her Spitfire people, like you can't tell me what to do kind of thing. So that'd be really really interesting. I'm really excited for the payoff emotionally for Tess's death, because it feels like right now like she died and we're like, oh okay, she was a cool character for a couple episodes, but like I didn't have like a big emotional connection to her. But Joel, obviously that's his only like real life relationship that he had, so I'm just excited for that payoff.
Yeah. And note on that too, I mean, in that scene that you're talking about, we see a flashback of, I don't remember what year it was, but of Joel and Tess meeting Bill and Frank for the first time, and to see like it was just really cool to see Anna Torv, the actor who plays Tess, like they aged her down, and like to see the contrast from her in episodes 1 and 2 where she's got like scars on her face, like you can just tell they've been through a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And then to see this episode where she's like fresh and like, you know, she's spunky, she's got that fire like you said, and it's just like kind of, it was kind of a cool moment to see her younger self. And it probably was only like, I don't remember exactly the timeline, but I think it was only like 5 to 10 years is the span between that scene and the present day, and she looks like at least 20 years older. Like just
right.
I mean, it has taken a toll on her and Joel. I mean, Joel looks older as well. But
The
I thought
aging
that
of
was
Frank and Bill
interesting.
too, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. When they get to that final like scene, and my first like thought when Ron, I was gonna say Ron Swanson, but when Nick Offerman comes over and Frank is painting, and Bill kind of looks at him and they share, kind of like this old like couple look that they respect and like love each other, and it's just like wow, like these dudes they aged a lot in the 10 years that have passed since then. But yeah, just a beautiful story between those guys, honestly. Like they did a fantastic job. Pulled at my heartstrings a little bit, which I was not expecting in this episode. So that's one of the reasons I gave that 6 out of 6. But yeah, just some fun notes.
The real winner of The Last of Us, Linda Ronstadt. Congratulations on 5,000% viewership increase on Spotify. Linda.
That's pretty awesome. Not gonna lie. Will that be as much of an emotional impact as Running Up That Hill?
Not a chance. Not even close.
Run Up That Hill was
because I can't tell you this.
Right after that, Run Up That Hill, we heard that a million times.
So many times.
Like I haven't heard this song anywhere else.
And the Running Up that Hill scene still holds up with Max. Like that still holds up.
Yeah, that scene was so good.
That's a great. They crushed it. They crushed that scene. Great job by them. So, but I do think for The Last of Us fans, that's a win. Right? I think that's a win that your show is that big.
Hey, Zane, I was looking into getting into this Gunpla thing. There's one called the Unicorn Banshee. What the heck is that all about? Actually, Jarrett, what you're thinking of is RX-0 Unicorn Gundam 2 Banshee, which is from the Mobile Suit Gundam. Actually, you know what? It's time for nerd news.
All right, let's head into nerd news as we close out the show. We're going to talk about DC Universe. Allegedly, tomorrow is the day that James Gunn is going to announce the new slate for DC. And so, Robbie, I just want to start with you as the biggest DC nerd guy on this show so far. What expectations do you have right now of this slate? Like, what to you is going to be a walk away of, okay, I feel safe in the hands of James Gunn. I feel like we're in good hands. I feel good about this slate. Is there anything he can do to make you feel that way?
We've talked about this at length on other episodes, but I feel like James Gunn is the right call. My concern has always been with DC is how do you right the ship? And I think we've talked about how riding the ship here would just be destroy everything and go away for a few years. I don't see them doing that. I see them. I thought it would have been the Flash would be the way to like restart everything, but we have an Aquaman movie after the Flash, so you can't do that. So it's just, I really don't know what the path is. The path is my concern. I think once we get there, once James Gunn's like hands are on all the projects and he has an idea of where we're going, I think then we'll be okay. It's how do we get to that point without making it this convoluted and confusing mess? Because that's what it's been so far. It's like DC a couple years ago was really pushing this multiverse thing, but they never really explained it. But they said it all works in the multiverse, but they never gave like a good explanation to the people going to the films about the multiverse. So it's like, how do you just come out now and say this? Because Marvel's been talking about the multiverse with like all these Quantumanium trailers. Sure. With Doctor Strange, with Spider-Man. So now they have like 3 like properties and Loki. So 4 properties before DC gets anything out about the multiverse, talking about the multiverse is coming. So they have a plan to get there and to explain things, and that's going to explain like the X-Men and Deadpool and all that stuff. How do we take the Flash and Aquaman and somehow get there? That's my concern. I don't know the answer. If James Gunn can figure out an answer, then I think we'll be fine. But it's just how do we get from that's the first step. Like, how do we get there? How do we get to the start of James Gunn's DC universe with the crap that we have to still come out for some reason?
What's also interesting too, Robbie, is so tomorrow, apparently it's going to be 11 o'clock Central, 12 Eastern. That's according to Grace Randall. Now,
You found a time. Wow.
that's what Grace says. Now
Grace, you're using
Grace
Grace
Randolph.
as your source.
That's the problem. It's Grace Randolph.
Sketch.
I know.
Sketchy
Yeah,
source.
exactly. Here's my question to you, Isaac. Marvel can't go 5 minutes without a leak. they make so much crap, but like people are just so easy to let things out of the bag out of Marvel. We love them for that. I personally think some of it's intentional, but that's neither here nor there. Do you think DC really has some stuff to share tomorrow, Isaac, or do you think it's going to be like Superman and that's it? We'll see you soon.
That's a great question. I do think James Gunn has things to share. Will he share it tomorrow? That's the thing that I'm like, maybe he won't share it tomorrow. Maybe it'll take him a week. Maybe it'll take him a month. I don't know. But I think he does have things on his slate. I think he's got stuff that he wants to announce eventually. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Well, and by the time this episode goes live, that stuff will have either already been announced or it's gotten kicked down the can down the line to not be announced.
Exactly.
So the speculating on that is for the listener probably irrelevant. So then my question to both of you is, what is the winning property that needs to be on this list? Or I guess properties. What are the winning properties that need to be on this list? Robbie, we'll start with you.
Gosh, that's tough because
what has to be on this list for you to go, I'm good.
I know.
Feel good.
But what we know of James Gunn right now is he can take obscure characters and make them household names. Guardians of the Galaxy was not a household name, no matter who you asked.
Yes.
TikTok commenters, they are like, no one knew who they were. Peacemaker was not a known name.
Nowhere close.
Most of the people in Suicide Squad were known names. So now you're going to give James Gunn arguably the trifecta of biggest names in comic books. Maybe not anymore, but that would have been the staple years
ago. The Trinity, yeah.
With the big three, the Trinity. You have Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. You're golden as long as you make okay movies.
I'm hearing you say Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. That's what I'm hearing you say right now.
That's your answer. If you're going to build this universe, that's your answer. You start. You don't have to. I will say this. I think you have to start with Superman.
Yes.
And obviously they've done that a bunch. But that's where DC starts.
I agree.
That's the golden boy. That's where you have to start. I don't think James Gunn will. I will say that right now. I don't think he's starting with
And
Superman.
I have no sources because I am looking on some Reddit boards to see if I can find some stuff for conversation. I have no source on this, but I think Superman is the answer too, Robbie. I'm on the opposite side of that coin. I think Superman will be the first thing they announce tomorrow. I think they might even have an actor. Because if I'm James Gunn, I want people to trust me right out the gate. I'm coming out with that. And I'm saying, we're doing a multiverse story down the line, so we're going to get Cavill and all these other guys back. Oh, by the way, we're doing Aquaman, but Momoa's coming back to play Lobo. I think Lobo and Superman are on that list because you got to get people hyped about Lobo coming back. I think an obscure property, and I don't really have an answer for that. Maybe it's New Gods. I don't know. I'm trying to think what would be.
I think we are going to get a lot of obscure properties. If anything gets announced tomorrow, if there's let's say there's a slate. Let's say there's a slate for like a 3-year plan. I imagine if there's a 3-year plan, I bet there's 5 properties that are either TV shows or movies that are just random, like a small minority of like comic fans know who they are, like DC diehards know who they are, but everyone else is like, what the F is that?
Booster Gold. Yeah, like we're gonna get a Booster.
No, Booster Gold's decently well known.
So?
I imagine
I think a majority of people would know who Booster Gold is.
Comic book fans know Booster Gold.
You're thinking even more.
I'm thinking even more obscure than that. So I have because that's just James Gunn's thing.
He'll do at least one. I agree with that. But I think on the flip side of your argument of like, if he made those guys big, imagine what he could do as Superman is my thought. And that's why it's
Right.
fascinating. I think my answer is double down on the Batman. We already have Superman, an obscure property, Lobo, and a TV show that has Peacemaker in a crossover with somebody else. He's going to be fighting alongside her with some other. Maybe that's where maybe Doom Patrol comes back. I know he's ended that, but maybe he finds a way to bring those guys back because they're really, 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 people love that show.
I don't think that's him ending that. I think that's an HBO Discovery thing.
Which is, it's a shame because that show is really doing well.
The people that like that show really like that show.
They love it. Isaac, who do you think?
I think I'm with you, Max. I mean, why would you publicly say that Henry Cavill is not coming back as Superman and then not announce something Superman? I don't know. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like Superman has to be on that list. And I think you're definitely onto something with the like properties that nobody's ever heard of too, Robbie. I think there's definitely going to be a few of those thrown in there. I don't, man, where I'm kind of like questioning is we have the DC Trinity, which, I mean, like you guys already mentioned, is probably the best well-known characters in, superhero history. We have Gal Gadot, who technically is still Wonder Woman. Like James Gunn hasn't said that Gal Gadot is not coming back as Wonder Woman. And we have Pattinson as Batman already. What are we doing with these properties? Like, I think there's got to be some clarity on even if he's not announcing new properties, there's got to be some clarity on the state of the DCEU right now. Like, because he's definitely announced a lot of things. He's announced that there's a lot of stuff not coming back, but he probably needs more clarity in what is and isn't coming back. I mean, really the only thing we know is that he's bringing his own stuff back is pretty much all we know. And that Cavill's not coming back. He already obviously talked about that, but like, there's a lot of questions on
And
the
Black
table.
Adam.
So I think, and Black Adam, yeah. I think there's got to be more clarification from James Gunn more than anything. But I think a couple properties. Number one is I sent it in the group chat before, but My Time to Shine Hello. It's a pretty well respected like scooper Twitter account. They said that they weren't going to leak anything, but they sent a GIF of Swamp Thing as something that probably will be announced.
They
So
then
Swamp
backpedaled
Thing,
and said it was a joke.
they did. Oh, okay.
They did.
Well, I didn't see that part. So, I wouldn't be surprised because the Swamp Thing show that they had wasn't terrible, and I think a lot of people
Yeah, it was okay.
a lot of people liked it. So I would be surprised if that's a property they went with. One other thing that popped into my mind was the Question. We haven't really had a great. He's definitely an animated like stuff across the years, but a live action Question like detective show would be kind of cool. So, but beyond that, I'm not a huge DC guy, so I'm not like clamoring for any really little characters to come to the big screen or
I
anything.
think a Dead Man movie would be great too.
That would be interesting.
Dead Man would probably be coming.
I feel like, and it's due to probably CGI constraints, but we really haven't had a lot of like Martian Manhunter in live action. We definitely have, he's a character there, but he hasn't been a main focus, and that would be interesting. There's definitely a lot of things that they could do, but I'm just looking more for clarity on what the heck is going on with the DC.
And I think that's got to be the biggest answer. Thank you for saying that. Like, I think that's all people want with DC. We're so forgiving. I mean, the Batman, Robbie, you just a couple weeks ago said the Batman was the best movie of 2022. So the point I'm saying is, like, I think people would forgive if you just get a couple, knock off 3 or 4 in a row, stay to the course of your plan. I think we can do this. Man.
Doesn't seem like that hard, but DC and WB likes to make it hard.
I just don't understand how their universe is restarting before Marvel. I don't get it. How did Marvel have Endgame and their universe is restarting? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
No.
Well, and we've talked about it so many times. Like, DC in the comic books on paper has better lineup. Justice League has a better lineup than Marvel and the Avengers do. Like, it's better.
And they have incredible storylines that they can follow.
By all accounts, they should be bigger right now. But Marvel got the jump and they got the ball rolling. And
didn't get the jump. Marvel stayed consistent.
That's true.
They stayed consistent. Held to their guns.
That's why I want a universe where Kevin Feige goes to DC instead of Marvel. That's what I want. If I had a genie here, if there was a genie here who gave me 3 wishes.
Oh, Feige would have. Oh, man.
Is that one of them? That might be one of them.
Genie gives you 3 wishes, and that's one of them. That Kevin Feige.
It might be one of them.
If Feige was running this whole thing right out the gate, Robbie, where would he have started? Would he have started with Batman or Superman?
Superman. Start with Superman.
Man.
Because that's where you
But
start.
would he have made DC funnier, or would you think he would have kept it dark?
I don't care. It doesn't. It wouldn't matter.
I love that. Great answer.
Because DC used to be more campy anyway. DC wasn't dark until the 90s. So like they could have done whatever they wanted. You keep Batman dark because that's the joke in DC is that Batman's always like
dark, broody.
Batman's the emo kid. Yeah, like so like they can keep that and make everything else light and they can make fun of him. It would have been perfect.
Just my thought. I think the 90s comic runs are part of the reason DC got in the pickle they did. I think they felt like, oh, the audience, they're more serious, blah, 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 blah. That's R-rated comics. It's like, come on, dude. Marvel does it too.
But those are some of the best comic books.
They are, but I'm saying, like, I think the film creators, directors, and writers thought they had to stay dark sequentially. And it's like, you actually don't have to do that. You can have both.
You decided to go with the guy that has everything in sepia tone or whatever with Zack Snyder. So like, what do you think you were gonna get?
Good point.
Like, there's like he made it so difficult for other people to come in and direct movies because the color of your universe is gray. Like where were there wasn't anywhere for someone else to go. Like Patty Jenkins tried with Wonder Woman and it worked for one movie
because they were in the Cold War.
Yeah, because everything was gray. Yeah, it was a
right
dark
in the
tone
80s.
still. And it was
worked so
awful.
well.
The universe didn't add up. That's the thing with like every Marvel movie, as much as I hate some of the tropes that they fall into with like bad guy shows up, they kill bad guy, good guys survive. Like it is consistent. No director gets to change the color of the universe. Like it looks the same. If Captain America is in one movie and he looks one way, he's the exact same in another movie. Like
brutal.
That's just it's those little things that once that you connect all the dots, you're like, this doesn't work.
Right. You're right.
And Zack Snyder's universe didn't work.
It works within itself.
Yeah, it works within itself.
Yeah, if DC would have just been like, Zack Snyder, you get 6 movies, you get your Batman vs Superman, you get the one that just came, the actual Justice League, and then you can go Dark Side War, and you get your movies off of that. Fine. Like then just kill it. But they decided to give him all power, and it didn't work, and it was bad.
I think next week we'll have our answer. We'll have our answer on this.
I hope. I'm excited. It'll be interesting for people that are going to listen to this probably after
everything
it comes out.
Yeah,
or not.
We'll see.
Should we put our money on one thing that's going to get announced
Superman.
tomorrow? It can't be
put my money on Superman.
You're putting your money on Superman? It has to be different, Isaac. What
different than what I've said?
Yeah. Well, no. Just one thing you have to put your money on. What is it? Just can't be Superman. What's one thing we get tomorrow?
Gosh. You go first. I'm thinking. I don't know.
I have a feeling that James Gunn wants to do JSA, not JLA. And that's, I think, another reason why he immediately went, Black Adam, you're done. You've already ruined some really good characters because, like, not that Dr. Fate or like Cyclone or Adam Smasher was that bad in that movie, but the movie itself was so bad. Like now I have to start over. I think James Gunn, because of who James Gunn is and likes a little bit more obscure, is going to go JSA and make them like the team. And then he might bring the big 3 in and they might have the JLA. I could see him doing both JSA and JLA same universe. And I would not be surprised if the big thing that's announced tomorrow is a JSA movie at the end of like a 4 or 5 year plan.
Well, then it would make sense for all the future stuff that you want to do, including all those guys, right? But then you're also pushing the consumer to read those comics that are not read right now, which is also part of this.
But with James Gunn is so good at making these like obscure, like little known characters into like really, really popular. And there's a lot of interesting characters you can go off there, like Mr. Terrific,
Yes.
Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, Dr. Midnight, all have like these really, really interesting stories that you can go off of that actually have really like deep, like personal stories that I feel like that might be the way he goes. And then he will also have a Justice League eventually down the road. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes, Justice League is coming, but first we're gonna have the JSA.
All right, here's my prediction. You've been talking about how James Gunn likes to basically work with the obscure things, and there's been rumors floating around about this, so it's not like a out of the blue type of thing. But I think Jason Momoa gets announced as Lobo when James Gunn comes out with his stuff. I mean, we've heard rumors about this for a long time, that he's going to be done as Aquaman and join the DCU as Lobo. But I think Lobo is a interesting property that hasn't been done before, and James Gunn could probably make it work.
Gosh,
so
dude, Lobo would translate so
Jason
well.
Momoa looks exactly the part. So
Jason Momoa looks like, but like he's this badass, like hilarious biker dude. Like that is a necessary means. Like they need a Lobo.
The other one that I was thinking of would be Zatanna. That was like the other one. I was like, that's a character that hasn't been done in the TV or movies yet. That's very popular. Is it popular enough for the general public, Robbie? I don't know. Like personally, I mean,
we got several Constantine properties that have been relatively successful. Not
I'm
like
just thinking like
blockbusters.
If people think
like,
if Robbie thinks Booster Gold is like known amongst the people, then I don't know about Zatanna. Then she must be known.
Here's why I think a lot of people loved those Justice League animated shows, and people are still watching those. Like the younger kids may not like them, but I would say 24 and above would love to have those characters. So that's where I think like the Constantine gets his love and Zatanna gets his love, and like Power Girl has an obvious few assets that people might enjoy. So like I think like there's like
few assets.
There's a lot to go off.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
There's a few things to go off of.
Oh man.
Like you're welcome.
That's great. That's a great way to end the show. Last of Us DC predictions. There you go. We'll see you on the other side of the DC predictions. Isaac, thanks for coming on, man.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Always a pleasure. It's high praise.
High praise.
High praise.
And Robbie, let's hope tomorrow is a day of hope for you as you turn a new page on the DC universe love.
A rebellion built on hope.
Let's hope. It is the DCU now, not the DCEU. That's what James Gunn did say. It's DCU.
I don't care what they call it. Just make it good.
And on that note, we appreciate you, audience, for sticking with us and listening today. You can check out everything we talked about on the show notes below. You can also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and TikTok. As always, we love you guys 3000. We'll see you guys later. See ya. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.